This is the Misdirected Mark Podcast, a podcast about gaming, game mastering, and entertaining you, our listeners. We are explicit, you have been warned, and I'd like to thank Mike Willard for letting us use his music on our show. Now let's pick up those mics and get on with this thing.
All right, I've got the snacks set up, and Jerry, why do you have that big bag?
Did somebody say bag?
It's more of a satchel. You said we were doing GM tools this week, so I brought my tool bag of holding.
I think you might be confused. The workshop doesn't always use physical tools.
Yeah, why do you have a hammer? Why do you have a hammer in this gaming bag?
It's a rubber mallet. You use it on rules lawyers. Same reason I used to carry that big, heavy Pathfinder 1E book.
Yes. Better handle, though.
I mean, yes. A lot of GM tools are intangible, like the 8 skills of GMing.
That's true. That's true. But I guess many of them have physical components too. Like books.
I know. I have a copy of Eureka in here too.
Oh, that's nice.
That's a good choice. Is that an action figure of a genie in a pink tuxedo and a top hat?
Ooh, I've seen this one before. That is the Genie of Mistakes. He brings it out to warn players of really inadvisable actions. You know what? We probably should just talk about different kinds of tools.
Right. I think I have a chart of random show openings right in here. Next to the dry erase dice tower.
And with that, welcome to the 407th episode of the Misdirected Mark Podcast. Tonight, we are going to discuss various GMing tools and how to use them. After that, we're going to check in with the chat room for life and answer your questions. But first, my name is Phil.
My name is Jerry.
And I am Old Man Logan.
It occurs to me that this topic was a mistake.
Why?
We should have done something on healing for the 407th episode.
Oh.
Yes, that's true.
That's
a
tiny little stretch there, but
I am remiss.
I do like that.
Remiss in my duties to catch that, and
not a lot of people would have caught that one though.
No.
I mean, the old folks would have.
Not necessarily.
I didn't get it until you played
7-7.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
just saying. So close.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's a MASH reference for you youngins. MASH was a TV show back in the 70s and 80s about the Korean War.
It was pretty much a TV show.
Korean War that lasted 5 seasons longer than the war did.
It did.
It was a comedy about the Korean War. That's the thing.
Yeah, it was a dramedy.
Yeah,
it was a dramedy. There was plenty of drama in that show.
Yeah, and it was the TV show that inspired the MAShed RPG.
Mm-hmm.
A game that I very much want to run one day if people are interested in taking a crack at it.
Yeah.
Anyway, before we enter into the House Misdirected, in these quarantines, as Senda likes to call it, let's perform our temperature check. How are we doing mentally and physically? Starting with you, Bob. How's it going?
I am physically My shoulder's been giving me a lot of trouble. We'll talk about that.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Mentally, I've been waffling back and forth this week between, doom scrolling and the existential dread and just kind of a mellow zen kind of a thing. So overall, not bad though.
Okay. Welcome. Come on in.
Yep.
Chair.
Physically, okay. I've been spending way too much time just sitting around. I gotta get up and do more moving around. I gotta start going for walks again and stuff like that. I could tell I'm just sitting too much, but that's easy enough to fix. Just get up and walk around. Mentally, pretty good. A few ups and downs and some shocks, but other than that, we're moving things forward. And just work has been a weird little thing where I've been accomplishing lots of little tasks every day instead of one big task, and it seems to bring on a lot of positive reinforcements. So I'm feeling pretty good.
All right, welcome.
How about you, Phil?
Yeah, I myself, I'm feeling great physically. I have not stopped riding my bike. So I think I'm now 3 weeks straight riding every day. Increased my distance again, so I'm now riding 1.78 miles, so about a 15-minute ride, which is not bad. I'm doing okay. I'll talk about it when we get into it later. I got to make some modifications to my bike, just based on noticing some things while I was riding. So I'll talk about that later. Mentally, I had a craptastic week at work last week, but managed to shake it off really well. So rolled into the weekend and kind of let everything go and had a really enjoyable weekend. Talk a little bit about that later in the show as well. So mentally, I'm doing all right. Like, and I think, riding right before the show agrees with me endorphin wise. So, I'm coming in too. Let me close the door behind us and let's do our one thing. Bob, take it away again. One thing.
So I am partway into season 3 of Clone Wars, and man, they really brought the feels. Like, they make you care about, like, some of these clone troopers.
Oh, fuck yes.
I'm like, wow. When I got to the episode about Domino Squad, I was like, wow. They really brought it for this. And old 99, I'm like, oh man. So yeah, Clone Wars, they like I said, I'm only partway into season 3, and they're doing a real nice job. I'm enjoying the hell out of this.
Sweet. Jerry, you've been watching some TV too, right?
Oh yeah, saw a lot of Cobra Kai. Caught up to about halfway through season 2. Some serious feels. Even like I said, I didn't dislike the movie. The original movies were never part of my like childhood zeitgeist. I'm like, I watched them, like, oh, they're interesting, they're cool. That was it. Never really was a huge fanboy. But I'll tell you what, man, that show is bringing the feels, and it doesn't undo anything from the original movie. It doesn't crap on your childhood, but man, it will pull you in 10 different directions at once, and it's good that way. Okay.
It's good stuff. I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it a little when we get into the conversation corner, because I'm a huge Cobra Kai fan as well. For me, my one thing this week is I finally had all my players together to run what I really am considering my first session of Numenera, and yeah, it was good. It was good. I like the system. Starting to get a good feel for how to run it. It's as systems go, it's a Cypher's a pretty light system to run, so I like it in that respect. Despite the size of the Numenera book, which is enormous, the game itself is actually pretty straightforward to run, and I like the characters are good. I think everybody's like kind of settling into their characters. We did this group, so this is my Bob, my Bob Glenn Tony group. You guys are like really good when I toss out those background question things. Like, you guys are really good at coming up with these like really tangible backgrounds that are very useful and really help me cement the game. Like, now that we have all 3 players together and kind of put the backgrounds together and kind of saw how everybody's connected to one another, I have a really good feel for you guys. And I got some pretty good ideas for the game. But now I just I need to kind of sketch out some like bigger ideas. Like you had mentioned, I think, Bob, the other day, like we haven't done anything really epic in a while. And this might be a fun place to do some really epic shit.
Weird fantasy / sci-fi epic. Yeah.
Man, there is no end to the weirdness I can jam into this game.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was really excited. And like I said, we had our first combat. You rolled a 1. I got a free GM intrusion. That was actually fun. It's fun because I was a little nervous at first. I was like, oh man, these GM intrusions. And then I'm like, these are just hard moves. Like this is just a hard move. That's fine.
Want it. It makes your brain go, okay.
Exactly. I was like, I'm totally good at making these moves now. Like, no problem. So yeah, we played. We got started into our adventure, and I'm getting a good feel for how to run Cypher, which I think is really interesting. And I think I said this. I can't remember where I said this. Cypher is a game that sits on a line, and it actually sits on 2 lines. So setting wise, the game can be very sci-fi or very fantasy, whichever way you want to tip the game. And then the other thing is you could run this game very traditional or you can run this game more indie, depending on how you kind of look at the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And, my indie slant at running games, like I'm looking at these things and I'm like, yeah, I'm just going to set stakes for these roles. Like these roles aren't binary. These roles are stakes. Like if you pass, these things happen. If you fail, there are these consequences. If I get an intrusion, that's a hard move. Like
honestly, you could use it as a transitional game between the two sides.
Rob Donahue once had written an article years and years ago about off-ramp games from D&D. Like if you're coming off of D&D, like here are some suggestions. And yeah, I think Numenera / Cypher, especially Numenera. I think Numenera is probably one of the easiest ones you would sell a D&D group on, because it's still, again, the setting thing. You can make it feel fantasy.
Yep.
I, on the other hand, want to make it feel science fiction, because I am a big sci-fi nerd, not a big fantasy nerd. So we're going to do some more sci-fi-ish things. Plus, I think that'll also skew to you guys as well, especially Tony.
Yeah.
Coolness. So yeah, Numenera. Very, very much so. All right, cool. I'm going to hit a few announcements before we jump over to the feature segment. So if you're listening live, DS9 Watch Club Week 2 starts this week. It is never too late to join us. We'll be doing this all the way till February. To be honest, if you wanted to wait till season 3 or 4 because you've watched the show before, feel free to jump in. I could probably tell you roughly when those dates will be for a season 3 jump in and a season 4 jump in. But we're going to finish out season 1 this week because these were the episodes I could discard.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to watch 2 tonight after the show.
Plus season 1 was short.
It is also a shorter season. Yep. It was a January premiere.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was a January premiere, so it went January through June.
Yeah. 19
the year it came out. Yeah, 19 episodes.
Cool.
In this week is the for me, this is special. It is the episode that sold me on the series. It is the episode named Duet. It is an amazing episode. I will be gleefully watching it. It is. Once I saw Duet, I realized what the show was capable of,
mm-hmm.
and at that moment, I was like, "Here, take my heart. It is now yours."
Yep.
Yes.
So I don't necessarily expect everyone else to have that reaction. But for me, it was very much a sign of this is a very different Star Trek.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what to me has made DS9 my favorite. It is a very different Star Trek. And Duet is a great example of that. So we'll be watching that this week. And I'm very excited. The other thing on a lighter note that I wanted to note is there is a hashtag trending on Twitter today. Hashtag Thirst Trap RPG. I'm not sure exactly how it got started. All of a sudden, all these like really attractive people started showing up in my timeline with the hashtag. So I did not hesitate. I jumped in and threw a Thirst Trap picture in myself. And so if you are on Twitter, hit up hashtag Thirst Trap, all one word, RPG. Thirst Trap RPG, all one word. And check it out. Because
gamers are thirsty too.
Yeah, gamers are thirsty. There's some, look, I grew up in the 80s.
Yeah.
When that nerd trope about, playing D&D was like really true.
Yeah.
It is not true anymore.
Ooh.
Some very, very, very attractive people in our hobby.
Yep.
Yes. We were just talking about one before the show. So, yes. And not in a nasty way, but
no. Yeah. But it was just some very, very pretty people in this hobby.
Some very attractive people in this hobby.
Yes, very much so. Anyway, you know what? Honestly, Twitter is somewhat of a hellish, dumpster fire,
hellscape. Yeah.
Hellscape. This is a bright spot on the hellscape. This is the flower growing in the wasteland. Go and enjoy Thirst Trap RPG.
Yeah.
Oh.
All right.
Would we like to would we like to move over to the workshop?
That brings us to our feature segment, The Workshop.
Go ahead. Take a drink, Phil.
Workshop. We're doing GM tools. We're talking about ways to help you while you're running your game because you want to run good games. You want to be a good game master. Break out those tools. Workshop.
Don't suck. Yeah.
All right. So tonight we're going to jump into a topic that I enjoy quite a bit, which are GM tools. As you know by now, I'm an avid collector of RPGs in general, but I really love GM tools. As for Phil, he co-authored 2 great GMing tools himself, the books Eureka and Masks. So tonight we're going to look at the GMing tools. We're going to look at what they are, we're going to look at what they do, and we're going to most importantly look at how to find the right ones for you, because not every GM tool works for every game. And we're going to do this in a very deconstructed way, breaking everything down first and then building it back up again.
But in order to do that, Phil, we need some definitions. So here...
Behold! You are in the presence of Definition Panda.
Epic. What do you got for us today, Phil?
Alrighty. Let's start right at the top, right? What is a GM tool? So it is something that aids in one of the many skills that a GM performs before, after, or during a game. Okay? So to further refine that definition, let's tease some things out of that, right? So, to further define this definition, let's take a few things out of what could be in the pile, what people might consider as GM tools. Mm-hmm. Office supplies are not GM tools. Players use office supplies too, right? So I asked people on Slack and stuff like that, and people were like, index cards. And I don't disagree. Index cards are fantastic. I use them all the time. It's not necessarily a GM tool, but it is an incredibly useful office supply to have in your GMing kit.
Yep.
All right, minis, terrain, and in some cases, maps. I'm going to put an asterisk next to maps because sometimes maps can be a GM tool, but sometimes those are just props, right? Yep. So those are just things on a table. We've done eons ago. We did a whole show about props. We may dust that one off later now that Jerry's here.
You know I'm a prop whore, so you know I know about props.
I know. We might need to dust off the prop episode and do a redux with you on the mics right now. Dice. Dice are not GMing tools, right? Those are just standard equipment. And advice books are not. So Jerry named Mask and Eureka. Those are very much GM tools. Never Unprepared, Odyssey. Let's see. I'm trying to think of some of the other ones. Robin Laws, like all of those. Those are not GMing tools. Those are just advice books. Yep. Those are just information. Okay. So kind of pulling this together. GM tools they can come with the game that they're for. So there are games that come with some GMing tools, as part of the game. They can be separate but specific for a game. So sometimes people make GMing tools for a particular game. I have done this for some of the games that I have run and played. Or a GMing tool can be separate and generic, meaning that it's just there to help you in general. It's not made for any particular game. I think we all understand what the word generic means. I don't know why I'm defining it. We're in the defined segment. Yes. Sorry, I didn't.
Definition Panda defines. That's what he does.
That's right.
That is it.
Yeah. So before we get into some of the specific, misdirected Mark word scramble specifics about GM tools, you said that they aid in some of the many, and we've been using 8 as the number, skills that a GM performs. So, Jerry, what are some of the skills that these tools can help with?
All right. Well, first of all, since Phil and Senda have never officially named all of the GM skills, we're not going to try to be able to give a complete list, but there's more than 8. What we can do, though, is talk about some of the skills they can help with. And for example, these are going to be system mastery, improvisation, GM prep, and just stuff.
Not just stuff. Stuff is the placeholder when Phil needs to come back and fill in something that he didn't fill back in. So
no, I'm sticking to stuff because I'll tell you what, there's a lot of things we're going to talk about. Some of them are some of the GM tools you took out ahead. For example, generic dice are not tools, but there are specific dice that are designed to be GM tools, and those fall under stuff. So I'm sticking with stuff.
You may stick with stuff as particular skills. I will just tell you that as a writing collaborator, now that we're like we're doing this on a regular basis, the all capital stuff and all capital junk are placeholders for me to go back and fix something.
Those are Phil shortcuts for I need to do more here.
I did not think those 3 skills were enough, but I also did not think of any more skills. But hey, there are all sorts of things.
Actually, I'll tell you, it can be scene extrapolation.
There we go.
Would be one skill that you'd put in there.
Mm-hmm.
And also character development. There's a lot of character development skills that as the GM you will be doing with the players, that there are a lot of tools that we're going to talk about later that can help to spur players on and help to spur on their improvisation, not just yours, but theirs. And so I think both of those would fall under stuff as well.
Yeah, awesome.
Okay.
Well, thanks for trying to save that, though, and try to justify my placeholder.
Hey, I'm sticking with stuff. You've seen my basement. I've got stuff.
Stuff is now going to be a running gag on the show. You know it.
I think so.
But, Phil,
yes.
Right. Tools can help with these skills. What does it do for our game when we use them?
Sure. So when we use GM tools, there are a lot of benefits we can get from them, right? So first of all, we can get ideas and elements that are just outside of our comfort zone, right? When we randomly generate elements, and we're going to talk about different types of tools, but if we're talking about tables or cards or whatever, then these elements can often help expand our comfort zones, right? Because we're not the one who wrote them.
Mm-hmm.
This also helps to keep our content fresher and more original. We've talked about this before in improv that, under pressure, we always fall into our comfort zones.
Yep.
So having a tool that generates NPC names or NPC descriptions or a monster, right, like that you need for a scene, rather than all of a sudden panicking and I yell out hobgoblin, if I draw a card, it might be like something wild, like Displacer Beast, which I love, but in a moment of pressure is not the one I'm going to go to. Okay. And so the other thing about that is that that can take our game into really unexpected places, right? Mm-hmm. So one of these roles, and all of a sudden we're like, whoa, I didn't know I was going to have to incorporate this in the game, but all right, let's do it.
Yep.
It also takes care of another thing. This term could actually be on the Pandas definition list. Dead air, right? This is the radio term for when the radio goes quiet in your car and then you reach over and change the channel.
Actually, I think you did define it last week as like a definition with their definition, because you talked about your radio DJ days.
Yes. So this tool can keep games from hitting dead air. Mm-hmm. So if all of a sudden I'm stuck on a character name and I can hit a character list of some sort, then it just kind of keeps me going.
Yep.
It can help speed up prep, right? These tools can make prep go shorter, whatever. Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about, what kinds of things might help with that, but they can definitely speed up your prep. And we talked about, in multiple episodes, about the, prepping and, if prep becomes too cumbersome, then you stop prepping, and then either you're forced into improvising or you start to get kind of discouraged about running the game. So speeding up prep, very good. And these GM tools can help improve system mastery. Certain tools can help you learn the game that you're playing and run it better.
Awesome. All right. So Jerry and Phil, let's talk about some of the different kinds of tools that exist for GMs.
All right. So let's look at a couple of different types of GM tools. I think first we're going to break these into a few categories. And then in each category, we're going to talk about some of the tools you're going to find in that category. So Phil?
Yeah. Let's do before you even hit the table, prep tools, right? These are tools that are going to be, that are going to help you facilitate your prepping of a game. Might be a book of plots, right? That's Eureka. Could be maps. Remember, I said maps could potentially be a GM tool, right? So it could be, we could be making maps or, using tools to facilitate making maps. Coming up with monsters, coming up with treasure, with traps, all of those things.
The second thing it can do is to help with a lot of your session zero situation. Session zero tools are used for the start of your game, helping players with character creation, helping with setting and the like. And these can be things like life paths from the Adversary games, lists of names and locations, sometimes backstory and relationship generation tools that are things that will help to develop both the characters and the bonds they have with each other in the world.
Yeah, and no kidding, lists of names can also be a prep tool. I heavily rely on name generators while I'm doing prep. The next category is table tools. These are the tools that you actually use while you're sitting at the table. And they could be things like a list of names, list of encounters, cheat sheet for the game, hit locations. Yep. If you're into hit locations. Some people are.
Yep. GM tools also come in the form of different types of media. What are some of the common types?
So there are a number of different formats. We're never going to be able to cover all of them, but I think we'll cover all the popular ones. That first one is paper/book. And when I say book, I guess we could say paper or electronic, right? So this could be a PDF. This could be something printed out. This could be a book. This could be a set of charts, whatever. This format can contain a lot of information, right? So you can pack a lot of stuff into a book, but it may take up space on your table or in your bag. You know, if you're carrying this to a con, that kind of thing. It's going to require you to look up things if you're engaging it. So depending on how well it's organized, looking things up may be really easy, or you may be flipping through it, which kind of gets you to that dead air kind of space.
Yep.
Dead tree books are going to take up space to store them. You're going to need to put them on a shelf at home. You're going to need to stick them in your bag at a con, which means you're adding
no idea what you're talking about.
Right. You're going to add weight to your bag, that kind of thing. They may require a randomizer to make a selection, right? So if it's something like a chart of encounters, you may also need to roll dice and then look at the chart. Some examples of the book/file version of this. The Story Games Name Project is a fantastic free book of names. I think you can get the PDF for free, and then I think you can go on Lulu and buy a Dead Tree version. I have both. One I keep in my iPad. One I keep in my GM Caddy, which is the rolling cart that I keep next to me when I'm gaming. I have it in a drawer. GM screen or cheat sheets. I'm not a huge fan of GM screens, but I'm a huge fan of cheat sheets. I like cheat sheets a whole bunch. In fact, I have made many of my own cheat sheets. I've made them for games, and I have shared the ones I've made for some games like Blades in the Dark, Scum and Villainy, and things like that. Masks, the 1001 NPCs that by Engine Publishing. That is also a book. It's big. Like, if you got to carry that thing in your bag to a con, like, you'll know it's there. Cool. What's another format, Jer?
Oh, cards. I have boxes of bins of different RPG cards. I love them. Now, they're less information than a book, but more you're going to get on dice. And you can put a lot of things on a card these days. They take up a lot less footprint on the table. They can be self-randomizing if you need them. They're still going to need some sort of storage, but these days, with the plethora of RPG cards out there, and also just CCGs out there, there's plenty of card storage available, as long as you don't have a company that decides to make the cards some ridiculous size and shape. But we're going to get into that later on.
Bob, what's that kick-ass thing that you have for cards? The Quiver?
The Quiver.
Oh yeah, the Quiver.
Yeah.
That is a card storage. It's like a Quiver. It's a long box that zippers open, and it holds a shit ton. They have a smaller one they call the Bolt, but the first one that they came out with, it's about 2 feet long, maybe, and it has a strap on it. You throw it over your shoulder, and it kind of hangs there like a quiver. And you open it up, you get all your cards in.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
a couple of years ago, member of the chat room, Age Aquila, found these photo boxes. They're little plastic bins that hold 2 decks of cards side by side. They're designed for photographs. And there's a larger container that holds 14 of those. And I've got 2 of those full of nothing but just RPG cards. And as long as you've got some storage for them, they're easy to move around. You can tuck them in places. You can stick a deck in all rolled up. There's a bunch of things you can do. So some examples of what we use them for, there's the deck of names. There are the famous backstory cards that are great for generating backstories and such. Mm-hmm. Lots of games have really good NPC stat cards that will give you generic NPCs or specific NPCs on the fly. The 2 I would recommend, Fantasy Flight does several decks of NPC stat cards for each of their Genesys games that are really useful when you just want to have, a stormtrooper and 3 different Imperial officers. You can just pull them out of the deck real quick and look things up. Also, Drive-Thru Cards has something called Cast of Characters, which is a bunch of themed Savage Worlds decks, and they've got everything from monsters to and townspeople to townspeople of a winter village, a village near a Fey court, things like that. They'll have all sorts of stuff in between. So you can get a lot of very quick things on the fly that can be both improv, but also give the players something to work with, or just hand them out to the players as a character if they die. There are also cards that will give you random magic items, random things in a backpack, random things. Lots of cards now combine the card and the chart together. And we'll talk about some of those later on. But I'm a big fan of cards because they're quick and easy. You can grab a half dozen of them and stick them in your pack and have them available for later on.
I love the I'll just before I jump to the next one. I love the tactile feel of cards. Like I love cards. In fact, someday as a design consideration, I would like to make a card-based RPG. Cards are easier to print than ever before. I think it'd be a lot of fun to actually design a game around using cards. Anyway, next format's dice.
Yes.
Dice have less information than a card. You can't pack a whole bunch of information on it, right? Often a number, a couple symbols, something like that. They have a pretty small table footprint, right? A little pile of dice is, going to be, in many cases, a couple of dice are going to be smaller than a deck of cards, way smaller than a book. They are self-randomizing, right? Pick it up and roll it. Some examples. Rory story cubes.
Yep.
Fantastic. Hit location dice. I have a couple of these. And weather dice. I think I have 1 or 2 of those as well.
There are a number of dice that are very specifically designed for RPGs. There's a company that makes random 5e character dice. You literally have a die for species, a die for character class, a die for your background, a die for your specialties. You just roll a handful of dice. You need a quick NPC. You just toss these 6 dice on the table, and you've got a gnome wizard with the Outlander background and a specialty in tea making or something.
Yeah.
I love dice like that.
I mean, I think it's a good challenge if you're going to, make a character. Like, what do I want? What am I going to play? Boom.
Be a lot of fun. All right. Next one.
Yeah, that was mine. Was dice. So you have the next one.
We overlap on these a lot because we use a lot of Scrum tools.
Yep. Lots
of good mobile apps out there. The disadvantage is that you do have to have a mobile electronic device, and oftentimes you need to have an internet connection. They contain a lot of information versus the size. You can put a lot of things on a little phone. They can be designed for self-randomization. They can run out of power, so you don't carry a battery with you. And see for things like the crawler for Dungeon Crawl Classics. There are lots of good name generators out there. There are random dungeon generators out there that are maps now. Random town generators, random occupation generators, random rumor generators, and random dice rollers. And these can be a lot of fun, especially if you don't have your dice with you, or if you're using a game that has specialty dice, like Genesys. There's a Genesys
Again,
dice
we
roller.
did say the dice weren't dice of themselves. Were not dice of themselves was not a GM tool. But if it has like a hit location thing or something like that, that would be legit.
Well, I just think the dice rollers are good if you don't have those particular specialty dice either.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. Dice aren't a jamming. No. We've excluded dice as a jamming tool in this discussion.
I see.
All right. So the big dad to mobile apps is websites. Yeah. These you can hit with either a regular computer. Sometimes you can hit it with your phone if the person's done a nice job optimizing the design. You may be able to access it on your phone or not. It really can contain literally unlimited amount of information, right? It's only bounded by how much information somebody has and storage they can purchase. And trust me, storage isn't that expensive. Mm-hmm. They can totally be self-randomizing, of course. Mm-hmm. It is definitely also like your phone going to need power, whatever it is you're like interfacing with, you're going to need power. So, if power goes out or your internet goes down, something like that. I already said it could potentially work differently on mobile devices. Some of these things are going to work on mobile devices. Some of the things will not. But these are often where you find, so this is where I found the first name generators that I used, right? Town generators, which I just used recently for Numenera. And I think we'll talk about it in the second section. We'll talk about mapping software, because that is definitely a GM prep tool. And Bob's got a favorite, which I'm sure is going to make the list when we talk about favorite tools, because that's some good, those are some good tools. And if you suck at drawing, like I suck at drawing, mapping tools are a godsend if you're going to draw maps.
Yep.
Alrighty.
Okay. So what? Excuse me. So after that, now we know what types of tools are out there. Let's talk about how they might appear in different media. So for starters, let's think about a hit location tool, something to just randomize our hit locations. You might see that show up in a PDF that's just a random table that you're going to roll on.
Yep.
There are numerous sets of hit location cards that are out there. There are different kinds of hit location dice you can use. You might have a web app that you just hit it once and it shows you a hit location. And you might even have a website that has very detailed methods of generating your hit location. You hit a button, it tells you, where you hit, what bones you broke, and how many inches of flesh fall off, and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
Yep.
Stalking Internet Fantastic, for example. Things like that. So you've got different ways you can look at things. And treasure, even something as simple as a treasure list can be done as a random die. Again, as a table.
Yeah.
There are lots and lots and lots of treasure cards out there that work very, very well. So if you have a particular media that you like, look around a little bit. There's probably a GM tool that uses a lot of the media that you're comfortable with.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Totally.
So if we put that all together, I think we get to the big question. What tools should a GM get?
Right. So it depends.
Everybody's favorite answer. It depends.
I know it's such a shitty answer. Sorry, but it really does. It really does depend. But the whole reason of deconstructing it was to get to this point, right? To talk about how to find the right tool, right? So here's like a little rubric for figuring out what you need, right? So the first part of it is know thyself, right? So what areas of the game do you feel like you could use help with, right? Is it a prep? Are you struggling at prep, but you're kicking ass at the table? Are your session zeros a little flat? Are you struggling like in the middle of a game to come up with stuff like in the heat of the moment? Is it one of these? Is it multiples of these? Doesn't matter, but know what you're trying to fix. Mm-hmm. And then specific to that, like what skill are you trying to help with, right? So this could be idea generation, right? So that's part of improv. Could be system mastery. That's a big one for me. We'll talk about that in the next half of this segment. Then what would you like the tool to help solve, right? What's the thing you're not feeling skilled about? Is it a dead air issue? Is it a comfort zone issue? That kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And then once you know what you're in need of, you can consider the type of tools that will help you with that. If you're in need of something that helps with names, a chart might help you, or it might be something as simple as an app. If you're in trouble with mapping, and you're not a very good artist, there are lots of, like me, there are lots of programs out there that will do that for you. In the chat room, we have a couple people talking about different ways of looking at hit locations, everything from critical hits to where you're hit. There's cards available out there and dice, if you mentioned. And of course, there is the infamous weather that often gets ignored, but if you have a simple tool for it, it'll get used on a regular basis. And the right tools can help you use weather in a way that's not going to be oppressive, but still make it a fun part of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. All right. And then finally, now that you kind of know what problem you're solving, right, and maybe the kind of tool that's going to help, think about the media, right? Mm-hmm. So consider the tactile component. What's it going to be like to touch and use it? How do you envision yourself using the tool in the game? And in fact, years ago, and I'm going to get the pronunciation of this slightly wrong, so I apologize because my French is terrible. But I wrote an article about mise en place. I think never mind. I'm not going to agonize over it anyway. But the idea, and this is a cooking philosophy where all your stuff has a place. So that when you're cooking, you know where to reach for your knife, you know where to reach for a particular spice, that kind of thing. Yes. And I have written articles about doing that for your GMing space. I am very deliberate. If you ever watch me run a game, I set up my stuff in a particular place. My dice are always off to the left, and I always have note cards and a pen right in front of me, and I'll have some other stuff over to the right depending on the game. But one of those things early on when I'm starting to run a game is how do I lay out my space so that I'm not fumbling for stuff while I'm running the game, right? Because it takes away from me having to think about where stuff is, right? And I even do things like if I'm running at home, I have a wooden dice tray, one of those old, Pentagon wooden dice trays. I got mine at Gen Con one year. But I even take out my dice and kind of arrange them on the inside of the dice tray. They don't always stay like that during the game, but I kind of I do it in ascending order. So I kind of know my 4-sider's over to the far left and my 20 is over to the, closer towards me, that kind of thing. So consider that when you're thinking about the tool or tools you want to use for the game, where is this tool going to fit in the space that you're running? And that if it's your home game, right, you have some advantages. Like I have my GM Caddy, which is, one of those 3-drawer file cabinet carts, the plastic ones. So I keep some tools in there, but also when I'm getting ready to run the game, I pull that over next to me and put stuff up on top of it, right? So I have the table in front of me, but I also have this little sidecar where I can put stuff. If I'm running at a con, I almost always take over a chair. So I will have my crap displayed out in front of me, but I almost will always have extra crap on the chair to the right or left of me so that I can actually grab additional stuff and put it on the table. So you're going to want to think about that. You're going to want to think about your space in your GMing spot. Do you need this thing to be random? And if it is going to be random, does it need to be self-randomizing? Are you cool just picking up dice and randomizing it? What's your technology comfort level? Right. I run all my games with an iPad. So I'm not too hesitant about having an additional app that I can switch to really quickly to find a name. Or sometimes I'll just have my iPad for my notes and I'll have my phone with a name generator on it. But that also means that you got to at home, it's no big deal because you just plug it in. But at a con, it does mean that you're going to have to make sure that either you've done a good job of charging your gear through the day or that you've got a battery with you, that kind of thing. And all of that gets, for con purposes, all that's crap that has to go into your backpack. How are you going to manage all that?
Exactly. All right. So when you think about this, this mental exercise is going to help you narrow down to a tool that you need, and a tool is going to work best for you. It's also important to consider that sometimes we see a tool and it's just cool. We want to play with it at the table. That's part of the tactile part of it. And this is totally valid. And in that case, you can just use it. And the aforementioned Mr. Mistake is literally that. Somebody, I used to remind my players, I used to have players that would often make erroneous errors. And somebody based on a sketch comedy bought me a 6-inch Aladdin's Blue Genie wearing a pink top hat, coat, tux, and shoes. And that was Mr. Mistake. And when the players started just doing, when they were not obviously, but when they were just heading in the wrong direction, making the wrong leaps of logic, grabbing onto that red herring that wasn't supposed to be a red herring, I would just put Mr. Mistake in the center of the table and they knew about it. It was just cool. It was something that everybody liked to play with and have there because it was fun to hang on to. And sometimes you see the new swag and you want to play with it.
Yeah. I mean, look, I have bought many a GM tool in the past because I'm like, shit, that looks cool, and just bought it, right? Like, absolutely. The deconstruction part is great if you are looking to solve a certain problem. But what Jerry said is absolutely true. Sometimes that shit just looks cool. You see it on Kickstarter and you backed it. Yep. Don't fret. You didn't do anything wrong, right? Like, it's totally legit.
Yeah. I'm actually not a huge fan of dice towers on the table. One of my players made me a very cool R2D2 dice tower. And that sucker stays on the table for every game because it's just fun to play with.
That's awesome.
It is.
Can't argue with that logic.
Not at all.
Okay. So that was our deep dive into GM tools.
All right, we're going to take a break, but after that, we're going to talk about some of our favorite tools.
But first, Bob is going to tell you about the following show on the Misdirected Mark Network.
She's a Super Geek is an Any-nominated actual play RPG podcast highlighting women as GMs. Join them every other Tuesday for lots of different RPGs and guests. Mm-hmm. Now, the chat room.
Yeah.
So we had some other mentions.
Sure.
We're going to hit some of these in our second segment, but I just want to bring some of these up from the Queen herself. It's Not My Fault set of cards.
Oh, God, yes.
It's Not My Fault is
fantastic.
Is a fun. It's for Fate.
Mm-hmm.
It is a game starter.
Yes, it's a game starter for Fate Accelerated because it uses the approaches and fabulous tools. Fabulous. Mm-hmm. No Thank You Evil has super cute, bright, and fun monsters and stuff on cards.
And Monty Cook Games loves making cards.
Yeah.
Cipher decks and creature decks and yes, Monty Cook Games loves making the cards.
Absolutely.
And I appreciate it. Don't get me wrong. I appreciate it.
And there are several variants, but most notable for the Pathfinder role-playing game, there is a set of critical success and critical failure decks.
Yep.
Which can be a lot of fun if you're into that kind of thing. Some people don't really they don't really want to get into the weeds, so to speak, when it comes to that stuff. It's like, I critically failed. Okay, I critically failed.
I love that you say that as the guy who in Forbidden Lands, even if you kill the guy, wants your roll on the critical wound table just to know how he went down before he died.
Know how badly I fucked up this monster. That's those are some of the fun card-based tools that are out there that I'm a huge fan of cards too.
I don't know what it is about cards, right? I don't understand the psychology of it, but I know, and I'll be honest, I'm just gonna armchair psychology here. I don't know if it's the wonder of playing with decks of playing cards when we're kids. I don't know if it was from collecting baseball cards and garbage pail kids and stuff like that when I was in elementary school. But or if it was the intoxication of your first game of Magic. But like, I love cards as randomizers and as tools. Like, I love cards. Yep. I will always be drawn towards GM tools that come in the form of cards. Like, even if I don't buy it, you'll at least get a look at it. Like, I'll at least look at it. I'm least likely to get dice because I'm just like, I don't know. There's not much that's going on. I am most likely to buy cards.
Yeah, one of the things that I haven't tried, and again, I don't GM currently, so it's less likely that I'm going to use it. with not actually doing any GMing. But I got this idea from a couple of places. I think Martin was a big fan. Martin Ralia. And John Arcadian, I think, has done it too a few times, is drop tables.
Yes. Oh, fuck yeah, drop tables.
You take a bunch of dice and you just drop them on the table, and where they land on whatever you've got, like a grid laid out with stuff written on it, and you drop the dice on it, and wherever they land, that's the thing.
Yep. Now, I will say this. I like drop tables as a prep tool.
Yes.
Not so much as a table tool, right? Because they're a little, as a table tool, it's a little clunky to like quick whip this thing out, like stand up, chuck some dice on it. But there's a supplement, and it escapes the name of me. It's a cyberpunk supplement that came out in the last couple years that was really good. And it had a bunch of drop tables for things like cyberpunk buildings and gangs and things like that. And it was totally fun to use.
There's a couple of things. I think Mothership uses that now for designing your ship.
Cool.
For cards, I'll tell you what, the tactileness of the cards are really useful. Yeah. And nice, but the fact that they're getting better at using cards for other things now means that you can you can get a couple different kinds of cards together. You know, grab 2 map cards, 3 encounter cards, 2 backstory cards, a loot card, 3 NPC cards. Put them all together in a stack this high and stick them in your book and have some stuff pre-generated ahead of time without having to go through the time of writing it all out.
Yep.
And there's still a play. It's also the playability. That's why Savage Worlds never got away from the card-based initiative, both for its pros and cons.
Yeah.
There's something about that working there, or the Marvel Saga version that had.
Marvel Saga is a game that does not get enough love and was not around long enough to get enough love.
Yep.
I only wish that Saga had come out during the MCU days. Like,
oh, good God.
So that it could have been around and coded for MCU as well. Like, that would have been...
The Marvel Saga role-playing game was the first RPG, superhero RPG, that, to me, handled a character like Spider-Man well.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
There were things about Spider-Man that just didn't feel right in other RPGs. Like, you couldn't get the right, feel of what his agility was and what his different abilities were and different stuff like that. But for some reason, we sat down to play Saga, and I'm like, I got to play Spider-Man and see how it works. And it felt like Spider-Man.
And it's a really fun system. I still have all of it.
I do too.
Yeah, we could always go. We could dust. We should. It would be really fun. We need another GM or something. Like, we could commit to a 3 GM thing and get somebody like Jer can run Face Rip. I could relearn Saga, and if somebody ran Marvel Heroic, and we could just do like a Marvel-thon of trying, like just trying different systems.
Yep.
You know what I would like to do? I would like to take Saga and do an EP of it like we did with Gangbusters.
Oh, well, yeah.
Oh. Okay.
I'll tell you what. I have never played the Saga. I have all the Saga Dragonlance stuff, but never played it. And that looks really
I ran Saga Dragonlance a long, long time ago.
Looked fun.
It was not bad. I mean, it's fifth age or whatever it was, like the it was the one that followed the fifth book, which is not my favorite book, right? The one where
I'm good with that. I actually like that part of the world better myself anyway, so I'd be all for that.
The one where they wrecked Kenders.
I didn't like that. I just like the idea of after the war.
Yeah, no, I like after the war, but the
don't wreck Kenders. Section. Kenders, love or hate Kenders, they are an iconic part of that universe. You should not mess with them in that game.
Yeah, when they messed with it in the book, I was like, oh, you guys have gone too far. Like, this is not. You made Tasselhoff cry. Like, there's only one reason Tasselhoff should cry, and that's when Flint dies, and I cried, and we all cried, and
there was crying.
Like, right. By the way, the supplement that I could not think of the name of, which somebody in the chat room did grab, was Augmented Reality. Yeah. By the way, if you are running anything cyberpunk or cyberpunk adjacent, go and get that. It's a neutral book of cyberpunk stuff, and it is full of on the topic of GMing tools. It is drop tables and random roll table. Like, oh man, when we did that little stint, Bob, when we were playing Veil 2020, that's what I used to generate everything that we played, like when we played on Sundays.
Cool.
Like plots, characters, like all of that. I just rolled shit up at home and threw it on an index card and took it with me to the game. Good shit.
Cool. All right. So that is our first
delve in the GM tools.
What was that?
Our first delve in the GM tools.
Yeah. Now it's time for the roundtable. We're going to talk about our GM tool favorites, starting with the following question. Phil?
Yes. Question number 1 is, what are some of your favorite prep or session zero tools? Jer?
For me, I'm a big fan of cards. I like encounter cards. Sometimes when I'm prepping a game, especially if I'm prepping a game that's already like in the middle of a campaign, I'll grab a couple of encounter cards and just pull some out so that if the players either divert from the main path, decide to start their own little side quest, or if we're just at a point where we've had too much of a long beat, but I don't want to get them into the main meat of the story, I can have a fun encounter. And I don't mean combat all the time. So there are lots of good encounter cards that just have things like, 2 pixies try to sell you some magical apple cider, whatever, and run with it from there. For prep or session zero, I love backstory cards. Anything that allows the players to build bonds with each other. I never run a game anymore where it's you meet a bunch of strangers at a tavern. Every game I run is always going to be, you guys have known each other for years. Tell me how you know each other. And if they don't have something, backstory cards are great for that. Yep. And I like them especially because they focus the story on the other player. It's not what cool thing did you do. It's what cool thing did somebody else do or disturbing thing somebody else did that impressed you. And so it builds a bond. I also will always have a couple of decks of random item cards laying around. I'll normally draw 3 or 4 of them and have them ready. I almost always have one or more players who's either going to pickpocket something, the Kender situation. So he's going to be a Kender and go around and pick stuff up. Great. Have a couple random cards with just some things of, so it's not always, okay, you find 3 gold pieces and a spindle of thread. It's, you find a lucky rabbit's foot that's got, little gems around it. Each little gem is shaped like the head of a gnome, that kind of thing. Something simple.
So I remember as a kid, there was a Dragon magazine article that was a table of 100 items that a Kender could find in a pocket. And I thought that was just the coolest ass article. Like I'm trying to remember I can't even remember the issue of Dragon, but I'm going to go search for it right now.
Yeah. There are lots of, I've said this before, I just got a deck of cards called the Hyper Halflings Book of Lists, and each card is just 1d8 random swag from a different thing, and each card is a different, here's 1d8 random swag in the Mummy's Tomb, 1d8 random swag in the Merchant's Pocket, 1d8 random swag in the Guardsman's Boots, and so on. And they're just fun little things to have. And I found that if you prep that stuff ahead of time and have something, whether it's magical or not, you can leave it, is it magical or not, up to what happens at the table. You will have 1 or 2 players that's what they're there to play with. And once they get that tool, they will run with it and make a story out of it. And it might become part of the adventure, it might become part of the campaign. It might just be something that gives them a chance to role play their character more. Yep. I love that. I love those kind of props. And if it's something like a Pathfinder item card, which is a picture of something, here, you find this goblet and hand it to them. Let them figure out what it is. It might not be worth anything. It might be something interesting. They might come up with a story behind it. You might have a story for it, but it spurs on the creativity and promptiness of the game and draws your players back in a way that a lot of shy players don't get a chance to do. But when you have something like that, you can do that. And of course, your active players are just going to grab it and run with it and bring people along for the ride, which is good. So I like a lot of different cards. So that's my thing. Phil?
Cards good.
Cards good.
Fire bad.
Gotta hold the cards in your hand. Love the cards. Oh,
that's another old reference. Does anyone remember that reference?
Fire bad?
Red good. Fire bad.
Petey.
So.
All right. Guess it's me. Okay. For prep and things like that. So first of all, I love masks. I think having cool NPCs is really a key for having a session go off really well.
I heard that book's got a kick-ass index in it.
It's got like 15 indexes.
Yeah, but
bro.
one of them in particular is just like.
I understand it's well edited. So.
It's the book is a gem. It's just full of NPCs. Good, bad, and neutral for modern fantasy and sci-fi. Like you're gonna find, and then you can always drift them right outside of that. You're gonna find somebody that's gonna be useful. Also, the edge of the pages is full of names.
Yep.
So if you need a random name, just open one of the pages, look along the bottom or the side of the page, you'll find some names. So love masks. I will, once again, as full disclosure, am a co-author and now the publisher of that book. So take that for what it is. I have another site that I really like, the Fantasy City Generator. We'll put the link in the show notes. But I like this a lot. It makes a random city map, not super detailed, but gives like a shape of the shape of the city, and you have a couple of like different things you can pick, like small, medium, large. Does the town have walls? That kind of thing. But it's a really nice way to kind of quick whip up what a city looks like. This has become more important now that I'm playing on Roll20.
Yep.
So it's really nice to just be able to be like, oh, and this is what Synth Town looks like. Synth Town is the name of our town in Numenera. The other one, which has been a godsend for me as a website for years, is RinkWorks Name Generator. I have been using RinkWorks all the way back to my Iron Hero days. Many an NPC from Iron Heroes was named out of RinkWorks. It's got some knobs and dials you can turn for, how complex you want the name, and then you hit it and it makes a grid of names for you to kind of look through and pick from. And if you just refresh the page, it just keeps refreshing the grid. Pretty standard stuff, but it does produce a whole bunch of names in one shot. So you could just make one of those, print it and like take it with you, or copy it and paste it into
Every time you need a name, just take one, scratch it off the list.
Yeah, absolutely.
RinkWorks is great.
RinkWorks is fantastic. I love it a whole bunch. If you're doing modern games, then I would go like there are plenty of modern generators that will generate lists of names using census data and things like that. Mm-hmm. Those are pretty rad as well. How about you, Bob?
Yeah, when it comes to, just to tack onto the end of that, when it comes to fantasy names, if I'm not using RinkWorks, I'm using Seventh Sanctum. Between those two, I've got all the names I could ever need for fantasy type stuff, and yeah, good times. Yeah. So my current favorite prep tool is the Dungeon Scrawl mapping tool.
Okay, we're going to pause for a moment. This web app is one of the most ridiculous mapping tools I've ever seen. Go ahead. Resume.
There's a tiny little bit of a learning curve to figure out how it works, but once you know how everything works, it's simple, it's quick, the results are gorgeous. You've got a bunch of different tweaks to the settings that you can make for your visual style. You can make your classical blue and white like a module. You can have a kind of an off-white, brownish, tannish kind of old scroll looking kind of feel to them.
Sepia kind of thing.
Tone. There's just tons of stuff, and they've been adding in additional art assets that you can put in, so that you can add in like tables and chairs and beds and chests and piles of stuff and different things like that.
It does hatch mark outlines.
It does all kinds of. It's just super fabulous. We'll have that link in the show notes. It's fabulous. I did a map of our our keep for Forbidden Lands. Weatherstone. And it looks fabulous. So love that tool. That is my current favorite thing. Beyond that, I love backstory cards and having random NPC cards for doing prep and session 0 type stuff. Sometimes I will want to have those around if I'm not feeling particularly creative during a session 0 as a player. Just having something that you can pull a card out and have something written on it, and just to spark you, because we've all done this. You're in a position where it's like, come up with something on the fly, and you don't have a lot of constraints. So you're like in this big giant white area of nothingness, and you're like, pull something out of thin air. I don't know. You throw a constraint on it, and all of a sudden your mind starts chugging away on stuff. So those two things, love having those around.
I can't even say enough about Scrawl. I purposely didn't put it on my list because I knew you would. Yeah. I watched the creator on Twitter put it in, was putting up pictures in development until it finally released. And then when it released, I ran out and tried it, and I was like, this is stupid. And I mean stupid as in great. I was I slapped together a 5-room dungeon in 2 minutes. And I was like, this is 100 times better than any junk I could draw.
Yep.
And that was the alpha release. It keeps getting updated and better.
Yep. Good stuff.
So, it's really good. It is the kind that, again, like Bob said, once you clear the learning curve, and it's not much of a learning curve, you can make your own maps for games that you could put up in Roll20 and not be I made this.
Yep.
Not like my dry erase board masterpieces, as all of you can recall from the past, my god awful hand drawn cartography.
There's some classics.
Really good stuff. All right.
What is our second question?
All right. What are some of your favorite table tools?
So first of all, names are a huge problem for me. So I also need a name generator that is with me at the table, often on my phone. It depends on the game. I had a really interesting set of card-based naming tools that were Japanese. Not that the cards were Japanese, but the names it made were Japanese that I used when we played Blood and Honor way back in the day. But I always need names. I am so bad at names. Modern name, it doesn't matter. I suck at names. So always have a name generator, whether it's on my phone, whether it's the story names project book in PDF on my iPad, whether it is an app on my phone. I'm always looking for name generators. I'm so bad at it. The other thing, which is absolutely clutch for me, is cheat sheets. Yes. Cheat sheets I always need cheat sheets. I do not want, I hate looking up things in books during the game, and I'm often forced to look up things in books during games. Especially when I'm learning games, but the more stuff that can be on a cheat sheet that I can reference, especially as I'm traversing the learning curve of the game, and I'm now just, not having to look up stuff as much as I need to kind of reference a thing, the better it is. As you know, I will lay out my own shit. And in the past, that was not fancy. In the past, that was using screen grabs.
Yep.
Cropped screen grabs and paste them into a Word document, all the way up to the bullshit I did for Blades in the Dark, where I took everything from, I had backed Blades in the Dark at the InDesign level. So I had the InDesign file for the book. So I took all the assets out of the book and put them in Illustrator so the cheat sheets I made for Blades in the Dark are actually with the Blades in the Dark fonts and all the styling. And that took me a weekend, like 2.5 days worth of work to make them. As you know, I own my own laminator. So not only do I make my cheat sheets, I then laminate all my cheat sheets. In fact, I just did this the other day for Numenera. I found these great cheat sheets from, I think the Alexandria, but I forget the name of the website. I think that's it, the Alexandria. And they were cool. They were a fantastic set of cheat sheets, but they were black text on white background. And I was like, oh, this is not like, it's fine, totally readable. But I'm like, it would be so much better if it just had some Numenera art behind it. Yeah. And I have a directory of Numenera wallpapers from backing the original Kickstarter. And luckily, in Adobe Photoshop, you can add backgrounds onto existing PDFs. So I opened up the PDF, grabbed the wallpaper, pasted it in, resized it, and then printed myself a set of cheat sheets with a very nice translucent Numenera backgrounds behind all the text. A little more visually pleasing.
Phil has elevated the cheat sheet to an art form.
I love cheat sheets. I make cheat sheets for all my games. I promise you this, that if I publish a game, it'll have cheat sheets because I will have made the cheat sheets in order to play test the game.
Yep.
So they'll just get tossed in with everything else. That is absolutely true of Hydro Hackers.
Yep.
In the PDF thing of Hydro Hackers, you will find all the other shit you need to run the game because I need all that shit.
Yep.
So cheat sheets. Cheat sheets. Bob?
Yeah, so when it comes to sitting down at a table, my big three would be name lists for sure. And I would probably go with the hard copy format where I would go to something like Rinkworks or Seventh Sanctum or whoever and get a page of them and then print it out and then have it there so that I don't have to keep picking up a device or looking at a device. I can just quick look over and go scratch a name off and go. And then random NPC cards and random item cards. I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff for at the table. Excuse me. Especially random NPCs. That's just to give a little flavor to, like, what is this bartender like? And you pick, it's just a random NPC card, and it's like, doesn't matter what the NPC is, but it's like, so, you know, this is a card about some kind of thief or rogue type person, but there's things on the card that you can use to flavor the person that you're working on.
Bob, what are those fantastic? I own them. They're sitting across from me in the GM caddy. What are those fantastic cards with the personalities on them, with the funny drawings?
Oh God!
It's not like Cardboard Heroes or Disposable.
Yes. Oh crap! I don't know what you're thinking of.
Oh, the Curse of Being Old.
Oh. You know what? We're all
dead air.
Oh no, dead air.
You guys, we can't all do it. It's Bob's list. Keep going.
I know.
I'm looking.
Go ahead.
That's the end of my list. I mean, that's what I had.
Okay.
So Jerry, what do you got?
All right. Well, first of all, I like charts. I love charts. I will always have a couple of extra charts buried under one of my books or tucked into the margin. Sometimes I'll just print them out and fold them in half and use them as a bookmark for whatever I think I'm going to need that. If they're going to be in a city that week, I'm going to have a chart. I love random, lightly detailed encounter charts. Dungeon in a Box is really good for this. Every month of Dungeon in a Box, you will get a page of just random stuff for that adventure. It might be, 10 different pirate captains or 6 different things for sale in a wagon or 12 different pranks the Fae are going to play on the party, whatever. And sometimes they'll be slightly more detailed. Yes, Short Order Heroes. Short Order Heroes is the name of the cards. And I like Short Order Heroes. And I also like charts that'll have things like the aforementioned Pixie selling drinks and stuff. Anything that'll just give you, a sentence or two of a random encounter that you can use to spice up the game if things get dull. Sometimes your players just aren't interested in the dungeon crawl and they want something interesting. Or you haven't thought far enough ahead and done that. I'm a big fan of item cards. I don't use them as much as I used to. When I ran Pathfinder, I used them all the time because I was part of the Pathfinder had a monthly card subscription where every month they gave you more RPG cards.
Ooh.
But I was not I didn't hand out a lot of magic items in Pathfinder, or at least not major stuff. But what I used to do is I would take the cards, put them in a card sleeve on a little piece, on a half a 3x5 card. I'd write down the stats of the card of the item and put it face down inside the item. So when they found a magic sword, they know it's a magic sword, but they don't know what it does until they use it. But they would have that card in front of them. And they would be playing around with that magic sword or that weird box or whatever. And every chance they had, they'd mess around with it until they figured out what it was. And they would flip it over and have the stats, but they'd still have that in front of them. They were also less likely to forget those odd magic items that we all forget. Oh, we had the box of wall walking. How come we didn't use that? But because now it's in front of them as a physical thing. Plus, players just like to have something to hold in their hands and look at. And, you know, even if it's not magically, and you find this sword, you know, it's a finely made sword. Well, that's my sword now. Look, it's got a unicorn on the handle. I'm never giving this sword up. I don't care if something's better. That kind of stuff is fun. And lastly, I use a lot of stat cards. If there's a game out there that has pre-printed cards of NPCs and monsters and characters and so on, I'm going to buy every deck of them because I'm an improv GM. My players will often go slightly off story and sometimes just prepping the game. It's nice to be able to pull, as I said before, 3 bounty hunters, you know, or, you know, you need to have a couple of random starships. Well, they've got a whole deck of just starships here. You know, you've got a junk freighter and a YT 1300 and a whatever. You can put them down there. So anything that I can do, and I don't need to have the whole deck. You can just grab a couple out and have them, but using them in the middle of the table makes it easier. It means I don't have to have a giant book with me. If I'm running a game and I know I'm going to have 10 different kinds of monsters, I can just have those 10 cards sitting there and put the entire monster manual or whatever it is away, and makes it easier on the GM to just play things and move things forward. So those are some of the things I like as table tools. I like charts. I like random encounter tables. I like item cards, and I like stat cards. I'm getting dangerously close to props, and I like props too, but those are different things.
As a whole separate discussion.
Yep. But some of my tools become props too. So, so all right. But that's what I like.
All right. So now, question 3. What is your GM tool wish list? Something that you don't have that either exists or not that you want.
Well, I want more cards. I think every game out there should have a deck of stuff. In Numenera, you've got the Cipher deck. It is really useful when you're doing things in the game. But yeah. I like I like the cards these days. A lot of companies are coming out with cards, and the card will have an entire encounter on it. No stats, just here's a description on the front of the location. Here's a description on the back of some sample things you can find. Great. The players decide to leave the city and walk around in the woods for 3 nights. You've got something to play with them. And I like anytime you've got charts and tables of more random stuff. You know, what did the magpie bring home? You know, what did the halfling steal this week? 20 different kinds of random tavern foods that aren't spiced potatoes. Whatever.
But I like spiced potatoes.
I do too, but they're a little cliche sometimes.
If they're not made by Otik, I don't want them.
I'm not saying anything. But I just anytime you can get those kind of things, and I still collect. A lot of companies are coming out with that sort of thing, and I still love them. I mean, you want to get Jerry's money, make a random RPG usable deck of cards, and I will definitely probably plunk down my $5 to $20 for them, whatever they're worth. Anything like that, make it easy. Bob, what are you looking for?
So, tongue in cheek, completely. I want EPUB versions of rulebooks, but that's not a GM tool.
Oh man,
that's
what are you doing? What are you doing getting the inmates all excited?
That's the joke answer to get Senda up in her seat.
See?
But wait, aren't they already all available in PDF format? So.
There we go.
However, the serious answer is very much like Jerry, more cards.
Yes.
There is a set of cards which I almost pulled the trigger on 2 years in a row at Origins. I bought some of the companion cards, which is the random NPCs and items and stuff like that. But there is a I can't remember the damn company now, but the product line is Atmar's Cardography. And for 2.5 years, my brain kept thinking it was cartography. And I'm like, no, it's cardography. Clever wink wink, because they're cards. Duh. And they have, like dungeon locations all on a deck of cards. And they're really cool. And one of these days, I'm just going to be like, I have a shitload of disposable income today. I'm just going to buy these and never use them because they're cool.
I think I've got a couple of them. I'm looking at them now on the website. I think I've got some.
Yeah, I know you and I had the discussion about them because I bought the individual, like the NPCs and the monsters and the items. I couldn't remember if you actually bought any of the encounter ones.
I think I bought one of them. My only difficulty with something like that was that it was very dungeon crawl oriented.
They were very dungeon crawl oriented. Although I believe they had one that was wildernessy. Which had
I would love to see one that
kind of thing.
I would love to see one that was cities. And that's something I've seen more and more of.
But more stuff like that. Yeah. Like those, there's a lot of utility in something like that. Because you can take a couple of cards from that and just make your classic 5-room encounter. Those kind of things. So yeah.
Especially since their cards had a little bit of creative dungeon dressing in each room. It wasn't just, here's a cave that's 4x3. It's here's a cave that's 4x3. There's a mysterious statue in one corner and some weird chest or box in the other, and then now you get something to play off of. Yeah. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
Norse
Foundry sells those.
Cool.
Nice.
So that is me. Phil.
I would like if we're talking about just stuff in general, like, first of all, I would like more cheat sheets made by the publishers. I say that, but I often then sometimes get mad when publishers make cheat sheets, and I'm like, this is wrong. Like, this is not the information I need. Yeah. Hence why I made my own Blades in the Dark ones out of frustration. But at least start me off with some cheat sheets, right? They're just valuable. If I'm buying it in PDF, then I want to be able to print them and laminate them. If I'm buying Dead Tree, then I want them in the box. I want them stuffed inside the book, shrink wrapped inside the book, whatever. The other thing I would love to see, I don't think it is feasible for small publishers to be able to make companion apps to their games, right? I think that would be really cool. I think what Purple Sorcerer does for DCC is incredible, right? I think Purple Sorcerer has done so much for helping players get into DCC by making a tool that makes DCC very digestible. And I think that if you're one of the big RPG companies, making mobile device supported companion apps would be great. But for us folk that are on the indie side that are way, way smaller, what would be amazing is if somebody made a universal app platform that could ingest XML data that publishers could then take their stuff and put it into some sort of, it doesn't have to be XML, but some sort of structured format that could then get sucked up into this app. So, I can't make a companion app for Ditch Lilies, but perhaps I could use this generic app tool and either pay money to the developers or however they want to work that out, but I pay some money to the developers and now I can get my data packaged, or I package my data to fit inside the app. And somebody could basically download the Ditch Lily module, and now they have cool Ditch Lily supporting materials when that game someday comes out on their phone or tablet.
Yep.
Like, I think that would be immense, because I think that's I would love my phone. My phone's always with me, I manage its power very well. I have a battery with me everywhere I go.
Yep.
It is a tool I am at this point in 2020 am comfortable relying on being on the table. I would love to be able to leverage it more to do more things in my game, and having some sort of app support, especially a generic platform that we could all plug into. I would, as a publisher, I would happily support this, right? Like I would make it a Kickstarter stretch goal, right? Hit this stretch goal, and we're going to buy, we're going to, pay for, having this game put up on this common platform.
Yes.
I would like to see that. So somewhere out there, if you are an app developer and you're like, son of a bitch, Phil, steal this idea. Steal it. Thank me somewhere in the about, whatever. I don't really even care if you even acknowledge me on it. Steal this idea. I want to give you money. Yes. I do not have the money to do the software development necessary to make an app that would, roll random tables or display rules or whatever. But if you do, I'm telling you, there is a market of indie game developers who would love to have web app stuff for their games that cannot afford doing app development. Please steal this idea.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not even stealing it. Just I release it into the world. Okay. Yeah, that's
good stuff.
That is shit I'm supporting today. That's me waxing poetically.
All right, well, that is our segment on GM tools.
Yeah, we hope that the next time you need to find a GM tool to help you out when you're gaming, that you will have found this advice helpful.
So let's check in with the chat room one more time, and then we'll go off to the conversation corner.
Yeah.
Chat room.
I think we are all caught up, other than me firing Senda up with my inflammatory.
Listen, we all agree EPUB rules for games are correct.
Yes.
There are some technical hurdles to jump through. She's not wrong. Yeah. She's been right for years. Yep. Okay.
Andy had a question specifically directed at Phil.
Yes.
How do you feel about using cheat sheets at the table?
I fucking love cheat sheets at the table. I use them all the time.
Yes.
They're in. Here's the thing. I don't use a GM screen because I don't like the. Let me preface this. There is only one game I like using GM screens for. All other games I do not like using GM screens. And sometimes I just lay the GM screen down on the table.
Yep.
But what I really like, because I don't want to take up the whole table length with the GM screen, is I like the cheat sheet because I can put them one under the other. Right. Mm-hmm. So I can shuffle my cheat sheets to the one I need. Right. Yep. There'll be a combat one. There's going to be a generic check one. There's going to be something else with healing rules. So, and front and back. And then that way I can just use them. I fucking love cheat sheets, right? Can't get enough of them. And if you have played in my home games, I not only make my own cheat sheets, I will make cheat sheets for the players, laminate the shit out of those, and spread them all over the table too.
Yep.
There have been times where the whole table is nothing but laminated sheets. Which leads me to the other idea that I have been really hot about for a long time, which is game mat.
Yes.
As in the kind of thing like you unroll across the table and it has rules all around it for everybody to use.
There are actually a couple good, I was going to say there's some good cheat sheets that work that way. There's one, it doesn't work for the new one, but for the old Savage Worlds, there was a 1-page 8.5 by 11 play mat that had the types of dice at the top, and then down the middle of it just had, these are the standard rolls. If you're fighting and you're having trouble doing this, use this move and roll this, and this is the result. And it was if you've never played this game before, here's how to play this game. And more importantly, what I loved was if you're doing this and you're not succeeding, this is the rule that lets you do it, and this is how to do it. Or if you want to try something different, if you don't want to fight and you want to taunt. And it was all spelled out in like bullet points on the page in charts and tables. It was brilliant. They haven't done one yet this was all third party.
Yeah.
But I love that for any game system. When you can just hand out, here's a cheat sheet with everything on it.
Yeah, that was a great cheat for Savage Worlds.
I'd like to answer, is that Kettle and Clock?
Yep. I was just going to say, Kettle and Clock's got a great question.
Yeah, Kettle and Clock has a question about the crawler. So the crawler is actually a whole bunch of tools rolled up in one. So one, it is a random random die roller, which is important because if you don't have access to the weird ass dice for DCC, you know, either you're borrowing dice from someone or whatever, but you can roll a D16, you can roll a D14 on here, that kind of thing. That's like literally just scratching the surface. There is a spell. There's a spell component, There's a spell aid in here. So because all spells in DCC are table, like you roll, like you make your spell check and then you look on the table to see what your effect is. So I can do it here really quick. So if I look at Chill Touch, it randomly rolled for me. I can do it in lookup mode instead of roll mode, as soon as I remember how to do that. But I can basically touch it and say what I got on my roll, and it will tell me. It will actually look up the table for me and present me just the result that I was looking for. It has the critical table. So if I roll a critical, I can have it roll in the critical and actually tell me what the effect was. Has the fumble table built right into it. It has a whole section of rules in a very readable format. I'm looking at this on my iPad right now, but like, for instance, if I want to look at firing in melee, I can just tap it here and I get the rule for firing in melee right here presented to me on the screen. So the crawler is actually like a really big, it's actually a really big app. Like it has a lot of stuff in here.
Very useful.
Super useful. In fact, I think it was sometime during quarantine, because I can no longer tell what months are anymore. They were doing fundraising for another round of development and hosting. And I went and immediately just like threw money at it. I was like, oh, like this thing's amazing. Like, please take it. I will say that if you are curious about playing DCC, it is a fantastic tool as a player or GM. I like it very much. The other tool I will recommend, if you're a GM tool, if you're going to run the game, is that if you go on Lulu and look up Dungeon Crawl Classics, you will find a book where somebody has compiled all of the tables from, not the spells and stuff, because there's too many of those, but all the other tables that you need, like the fumble tables, the critical tables, equipment, and all of that. And you can get this little book from Lulu for like $10 printed. And I always have that book sitting next to me when I run DCC. It's my go-to for quick lookups and things like that.
That is a fabulous app. There aren't a lot of games that have an app that
detailed?
Complete, that detailed.
It's also a nice app. Like, I mean, the presentation's really nice. The theming of it is really good. It's and I, you know, you're right. Like, there aren't a lot of games that have a companion app like this. There are even less games at the side, like at the tier of publisher that Goodman is. And Goodman's not a small publisher, but Goodman's like maybe a tier 2 publisher. I think they're probably like a high tier 3 publisher in terms of overall size. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
They don't get me wrong. They're successful, but Goodman doesn't actually make the app. Purple Sorcerer Games makes the app, which, by the way, I'll also plug. Purple Sorcerer Games has the random character generators for DCC. So if you're doing a funnel, you can go to their website and you can mass produce all the 0-level characters you need to march into the funnel with a few clicks. It's fantastic.
That is another GM tool that I would like to see more of. It's easier for a DCC funnel because they're 0-level characters. There isn't a lot of detail to them, but I would like to see. Here's my RPG of blah 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 blah. Go to the website, click this button, and we'll generate one character of every class or playbook or whatever randomly for you that you can just take and use as an example if you want to play test, or if you're just lazy, whatever. Like, I would like to see more. And these are things that, it's expensive to do web development. So it's not something that everybody's going to be able to do. But man, if those kind of tools were available for everything, that would be awesome.
Well, I mean, it's great if you have a drop it, if you're going to have a person drop in for a night and you want them to play and you're just like, hey, I'm going to whip you up a tier 2 glaive for Numenera, right? Just and done. Yeah. So, good stuff.
Cool.
Yep. That's about it.
All right.
I think that's all that we got there.
Let us do the thing where we roll into the conversation corner. Boom, 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 boom. I love that. Boom, boom, boom.
Right? It's such a cool, ethereal kind of playful sound.
All right. What do you got for us in the conversation corner, Jerry?
All right. Well, as I said, I watched Cobra Kai, and I'm almost done with it. Well done. Without giving any spoilers, I'm just going to say it really it deals really well with things like toxic masculinity. What happens when people see villains as heroes and heroes as villains, and it's a big. Just some of the '80s tropes are hilarious. I mean, the very idea that you could have a school today where you could have a martial arts fight in the library and nobody, no teacher pays attention to it, kind of thing. It's just, it's very 80s. It's very 80s. It's fun, and just some throwbacks to the movie and everything.
Its ability to call back the movie is actually amazing.
Yes, really well done. It makes you really feel for some of the villains in a way that you should feel for some of the villains. This is not a Joker thing where they're trying to make somebody who's a bad guy to a good guy. This is literally like, okay, we know what happened and why, so now we're going to try to make this character lovable, but he's also still a jerk.
And reforming.
Yeah, and reforming. I'm on episode 3 of Lovecraft Country. I like some of it. Some of it I think is it's an HBO show, so it's a much like Watchmen. It's one of those things where they're only telling you about half of what's happening every episode, and you're probably going to have to get to like episode 6 before
it all falls together.
The plot actually comes together. It's a little heavy-handed with a few things, but it's a lot of fun. Not as much Lovecraft. I mean, the opening sequence is good. I'm out to. I don't think it's HBO's greatest series, but it's worth watching if you like H.P. Lovecraft and you like the struggle against race relations. It's a good show. We played our second to last game of Aegon on Friday. Our next adventure is going to be our last one, where we kind of figure out how our heroes actually become glorified. I'm still up to. I'll be honest. I'm still on the fence about this game. It's got a neat idea. The mechanics are very bland. It's basically a board game as a role playing game. It's more of a board game than things like playing like Descent with the App is. It's really a game where almost nothing you do matters until the last roll of the game.
Oh.
And nothing you do leading up to that, except for one thing, nothing you do actually affects the final result. It's a game. My biggest problem with this game is that you can do all sorts of cool role-playing stuff and it has no effect on the final encounter.
No.
Because it's just assemble your dice pool, and you can't do anything to alter your dice pool except draw on resources you've had since the beginning of the game. So it's a game that would be fun to play like once as a con game.
Oh, okay.
And it would be fun to play. Like, we've got a really good group of players and a GM who lets us role play, but that's the fun of it. But I would have as much fun playing Carcassonne with this group as we are role playing, because there's really not a lot in the game to spur role playing. The game is all about build your dice pool, and it also has a major imbalance problem that I think we discussed. So I'm looking at the game. It's a neat game. It was fun to play. I'm glad it's over. I'm glad we're moving on to something else. But it has taught me a lot about game design and game GMing and things that just are not my thing for games. And I'll tell you, it's got a lot of problems as a game design system. The mechanics just are only designed for one thing and one thing only. So anyway, I started rewatching Rick and Morty season 4. I only saw it once when it was first out, and I hadn't gone back and watched it again. And good God. And it is like they're targeting some of us with a few things like the some after show stuff. And I just found out that there was a new season of Venture Brothers that I never saw. So I'm catching up on that too. So just kind of catching up on, I'm trying to watch a lot of half-hour shows. So I'm not sitting there watching TV for 6 hours straight, or something that I can get up and like go for a walk and watch on my phone. So, but just give me lots of good feels. Bob?
Yeah, so I took next week off from work. I planned it like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Told the boss Labor Day week, not working, taking it off. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm having a lot of trouble with my right shoulder lately. I've come to the conclusion that it is definitely jacked up. And I'm going to see my doctor about it on the 15th of this month. To have them take a look, hopefully do an MRI and figure out whether or not I have a torn rotator cuff or something. I had a similar problem with my left shoulder many years back, and it was diagnosed as a torn rotator cuff, and they went in to do the surgery and discovered it wasn't a torn rotator cuff. I had a bone spur underneath where the one bone in the shoulder, the tendon goes underneath it, out the hole.
Yep.
There was a bone spur in there that the tendon was rubbing against.
Ow.
So they went in there and they scraped that bone spur off. And I'm getting very similar feelings in the right shoulder that I had in the left at that time. So, don't know, but need to get it checked out because it's to the point where there's some significant pain at times. I've been icing it up, taking ibuprofen and stuff, and today I literally dragged out my sling from when I had the surgery on the left arm, and I wore the sling for a while this afternoon just to give it a break, just to try and not use it. And I'm a righty, so everything I do is with my right damn arm.
Oh, I'm aware.
Yep.
Except for the occasional things that, sometimes come up.
Social recreation.
Yeah, social recreation. But... so that's kind of been dominating my week, is the arm's just not quite right. It's annoying the crap out of me. Looking forward to our watch party tonight, getting some more DS9, and then finishing out the week with the rest of the episodes for the week. Definitely, I did this not that long ago. I went back last summer, I want to say, summer of 19. I went back and I watched all of DS9. And so it's way more fresh for me than it may be for somebody else that had seen it before. But I'm like enjoying it. So it's like Phil, it's my favorite Star Trek series. So looking forward to seeing some more of it and getting into it.
Yeah.
Phil.
More biking, everyday biking. Every day. I mean, I think I only missed one day in the last 3 weeks of for riding because it was just pouring and I couldn't go out. But I was riding the other day and noticed that my hands like started to fall asleep while I was riding. Right, like they're getting kind of tingly. So I did a quick Google search. Turns out that's pretty common and has a lot to do with the height of your handlebars. And there's not any way to raise the handlebars on my bike just like without an aftermarket kit. So I picked up an aftermarket kit today. It's actually, I mean, they're pretty brilliant how they do these things. Like, first of all, I mean, I just, hadn't paid attention to bikes for a long time, but the industry did a pretty good job for the most part, at least in my very small dealing with it, on standardizing for stuff. So buying like aftermarket stuff is like really easy. Like everything's sized correctly. Like need new pedals? No problem. They're pedals. They fit. Need a seat? No problem. It's going to fit on the post on your bike. So anyway, I got this aftermarket kit that should raise my handlebars up a few inches. And I was riding today and I kind of looked where my hands were, because the reason your hands wind up falling asleep, it's carpal tunnel. Like if you're leaning too far over on your handlebars, you're putting a lot of pressure on the palms of your hands, and that's going to cut off that nerve, and that's why your hands get tingly. So I'm hoping that raising those handlebars up will actually let me have a little more upright posture. I'm street riding this mountain bike. Like I'm not riding trails or, anything like that. I'm not that brave yet. I'm just totally fine just riding streets. So just having a little more upright posture on the bike should be nice. I'm definitely feeling a little more strength. I'm noticing that I'm riding in higher gears now and still getting good speed. And I just recently got my cell phone mount for my bike. So now I have Map My Ride going. So actually I'm starting to collect some metrics on how fast I'm going on these routes, how fast my mile, like my first mile is, my second mile, that kind of thing. So that's all really cool. I'm totally loving biking. It's actually been the thing it was the thing I couldn't do because if I walk, I just wind up jacking my ankles and things like that. So it is the physical activity that I get every day, and I feel like really good when I do it. And the kids go riding with me a lot, so that's actually a lot of fun. Just taking the kids out and around the block a little, with me.
More kid time.
Yeah, so that's good. I've been playing a specific mod pack of Minecraft called Stone Block 2, where you just start in a world full of stone, and you have to do all the shit to get like anything in the game. So I watched a couple of videos of people playing Stone Block 2, and realized that I was missing some obvious things to do. And I learned this really cool way to make an old school vanilla mob generator, like a free mob generator that is essentially damage proof. Like you won't get damaged slaughtering these creatures. I'll show it to you guys. I'll describe it to you guys off like in the after show or something like that. But anyway, it's just taking advantage of a whole bunch of shit like slabs and darkness and things like that. Anyway, I made this generator, and I don't know if you guys remember, in this mod pack, every time you complete one of their little quests, there's like random items they give you, right? It's like off like some random item table. So I have this stupid sword that's like plus 999 damage and looting 25. Mm-hmm. So I make the mob generator, and I'm like, and the first mobs appear, and I'm like, these are the first monsters I've encountered in the game right after like a week of playing. Mm-hmm. So I go and kill them. And all of a sudden, like I kill like 2 zombies. I have like a half stack of zombie flesh. I had a full stack of experience points, those experience cubes. Yeah. Like I had 64 experience. Like everything I hit with this thing, like spews out loot. So I killed like a whole bunch of monsters in my little monster trap thing there and got like a whole ton of shit. I can't wait till my first Enderman appears. To get those, those delicious ender pearls. But yeah, I've been playing that and getting better at Stone Block. I'm starting to understand the mod packs for it. There's some really weird mod packs that are kind of fun. That I'm looking forward to trying, like fluid cows, and there's like these weird chickens. But I think the one that I think everyone's gonna like is Mystical Agriculture. Okay. Which I think is going to be a mod pack I'm going to recommend. It lets you make plants that make items in the game. Like you can, after a while, you can make plants that harvest diamonds. You can make plants that harvest blaze rods or blaze powder. And I think for somebody like Andy, who, loves Botania, Mystical Agriculture might be just the kind of thing she would dig in terms of like being able to make plants that make items in the game. So it's needed in this game because you live in a world of stone, so you got to see, Andy's already in. So anyway, I've been playing a bunch of that. I've also been watching Cobra Kai. I watched it all on YouTube Red, but I am all about watching it again now that it's on Netflix. I need Netflix to know that they need to keep making this show. So I immediately went and started binging it again because I was like, I need them to have those juicy metrics.
They're actually already talking about a spinoff.
Well, I'm in.
They were. I was reading an article today at my lunch break that they've approached the producers, and the producers have 5 different concepts for spinoffs that when they're done with season 3, they may spin off to a different thing in the world of Cobra Kai, in addition to possibly doing a season 4. So they've got some good stuff they can pull on in there, which would all be awesome. So
I'm down with all of that. So I've been watching it again, and enjoying it. And then lastly, I've been watching Voyager. I am I think I just started on season 3. So I gotta say, I did not give this show a fair shake. I still like DS9 better, but there's a lot about Voyager that I'm enjoying, and I know it gets better because I've watched the later episodes more than I've watched the early seasons. There are a couple episodes, like when I make the watch list for this one, which I suspect this watch list will be shorter than DS9 because it is episodic, not serial. So it'll be easy to drop out a bunch of episodes and just put them on a recommend list. There are some episodes where, like, there was one recently, I don't want to talk too much about it, but I was like, shit, like my respect for Janeway has grown immensely. Like, there are some hard ass decisions they have written into these shows. And there are times where Janeway like just does something and I'm like, wow, like I am impressed. Plus, I love Tuvok. I think Tuvok may be one of the coolest Star Trek characters. I think Tuvok is awesome, and becoming a huge Tuvok fan as this series unfolds. Mm-hmm. So Voyager's pleasant. I did a little cooking as well. I'm not going to get too much into it. I'll talk about it in the after show. But I did some Sunday brunch cooking that was really delicious. And yeah, it's good. I'm good.
Cool.
All right.
Okay. Now it's time for the Patreon shoutouts, and we have rolled back around to the Royal Court.
Yay.
So we have Andrew Dacey, the Warden of Whiskies, Andy Olson, the Duke of Dice, Brian Kurtz, the Royal Doctor of Physic, Craig, the Lord of One Name, Eric Bonts, the Duke of Gators and the Lord of Beefness, GM, the Lord of the After Show, Jesse Edmond, the Royal Doctor, John C. LeMay, the Guard at the End of the World, John Carney, the Court Necromancer, Kevin Lovecraft, the Royal Beard, Michael Dinos, the Inquisitor of Mark, Richard Wyatt, Captain of the Royal Airship Fleet, Schmitty, the Keeper of the Labyrinth, Tiberius Starcrash Smith, the Baron of Britannia, and Todd Crapper, the Prophet of Probability. Thank you all for being patrons of the show, and thanks to everyone for listening tonight.
If you are free on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. the Queen's time, you're welcome. Come join us live on Twitch, where you can chat with other listeners in the awesome chat room for life and ask us the occasional question.
And if you cannot make it to the live show, check out our podcast each week, wherever you get your podcasts. And take a listen to some of our other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, such as Down with D&D, Bonestone Obsidian, the FM Gamers, Hannah's Talking Games, the Gnome Cast, John Who Hustle, She's a Super Geek, and Bonus Experience. You can and should also check out our sibling podcasts, the Tabletop Bellhop, the Knights of the Night, and the always amazing Gaming and BS.
Before you back that next GM tool on Kickstarter, no, I'm kidding, back it first.
Yes.
Then reach out to us. You can reach out to us directly and leave us some feedback. You can hit us up on emails, mmp@misdirectedmark.com, or check us out on Twitter. The show and the network is @misdirectedmark. He's Robert M. Everson. He's GM Jerry Mander. I don't know which way you guys are on the screen. I'm just pointing in different directions. And I am DNA Phil.
If you like what we do here and on the other shows in the Misdirected Mark Network, you can support our Patreon campaigns. MMP Down with D&D and Pandas Talking Games are at patreon.com/MMP. She's a Super Geek is at patreon.com/SassGeek. Zhang Hu Hustle is at patreon.com/Zhang Hu Hustle. And Bonus Experience is at patreon.com/Bonus Experience. Patrons of MMP Down with D&D and Pandas Talking Games get access to the after show, pre-production show notes, musical parodies, the Pandas Talking Games bonus outtakes, and other special releases.
This has been a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. Mic drop.
We out.